My name is Madison Hayes. I am 27 years old, a woman who's been carrying the weight of my family's words my whole life. They mocked me for years, branding me ugly and stupid, like it was my birthright. At a family dinner at Cheesecake Factory in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, my sister leaned in, smirking, and sneered. "Did Mom and Dad pick you up from the trash?" "Mom, Dad." My little brother, they all burst out laughing, like it was just another holiday card joke. I sat there, swallowing rage, their voices echoing decades of jabs about my looks and my stupid tech obsession. They had no clue I'd built something massive, something that'd make them choke on those words. A week later, my phone blew up 15 missed calls and a dozen texts from Mom, her voice desperate. "Please, save the house. We're losing everything." Their golden child's husband tanked his crypto startup, dragging their savings down with it. I typed back, "Ice cold, ugly and stupid is busy right now." That moment felt like shattering 27 years of their snow-covered lies. Ever been laughed at by the ones who should lift you up? Ever had to cut ties to save yourself? I did. And it's why I'm here, sharing how I turned their cruelty into my empire. Stick around, this gets wild. If their words ever cut you deep, hit subscribe, share your story below, and let's turn scars into strength together to get back to that suburb in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where the snow piled up like unspoken grudges. My dad, Brandon Hayes, was a car salesman, khakis, dad jokes, but the kind that landed like punches. He had this way of turning everything into a punchline at my expense. Mom, Carla Hayes, taught counseling at the local high school, always dishing advice that felt more like judgments. Then there was my sister Madison, 2 years older than me at 29 now, with that golden hair that bounced even in the wind, green eyes, and a nose like it was sculpted for magazine covers. She was the one everyone fawned over, the star of every photo op, and my little brother Riley, who was just a toddler back then but already picking up their cues, echoing the laughs like it was a game. Me, I got the short end, thanks to New Jersey humidity turning to frost. My dark hair frizzed like I'd stuck my finger in a socket. Dad's thick brows made mine a unibrow disaster. Mom's round face rounded mine out, and the body type that had my pediatrician checking husky on forms back in the early 2000s. Imagine being 8 flipping through school papers, seeing husky stamped like a label you couldn't peel off. That was me, discovering I was the other one in a family that prized perfection. The jabs started early, the kind that stick like snow to boots. My earliest memory of really getting it was Madison's 8th birthday party when I was 6. Mom had us all in matching outfits for the photos, but she kept fussing over me. "Honey, sucking your cheeks a bit, no? That's worse. Maybe just stand behind your sister." Adults chimed in, cooing over Madison. "She's the star, the other one's cozy for winter." Dad introduced us to his mall buddies as my daughter Madison and my little linebacker. He'd pause for the chuckle, and they'd laugh, because what else do you do when a dad roasts his own kid? "At least we'll save on prom dresses," he'd add. Winking. People laughed, but it burrowed in. Mom's cruelty came wrapped in help. At 9, she signed me up for Weight Watchers meetings, the only kid there, sitting with celery sticks while Madison got PB&J sandwiches and chips. Childhood obesity was the big scare then, but Mom made it personal. "Eat more veggies. Honey, your complexion looks tired from all that basement time." It wasn't just the food, it was the constant comparison. Madison brought home a B+ from cheer practice, and it was great effort. "Sweetie, I got an A on a test," and it was, "Well, if you weren't always on that stupid computer, maybe it'd be an A." Like my brain was the problem, not the fact that code didn't judge how I looked. Family reunions were winter hell, with the extended crew picking up the vibe because Mom and Dad broadcast it. Aunt Fiona, Mom's sister, once praised my snowflake drawing at Thanksgiving when I was 10, before I could blush. Mom jumped in. Yes, she's creative. Madison, tell everyone about your cheer solo in the winter show. The message was crystal. My wins didn't count. They were footnotes to Madison's spotlight. Riley. Barely 3 started giggling along when Dad called me stupid, ugly snowball, throwing snowballs at me in the yard like it was playtime. Everything was a contest, and I was rigged to lose from the start. Madison's green eyes got just like Grandma's lucky girl. Mine thick lashes, but you need to pluck those brows. Her bouncy hair, Pantene perfect. Mine, frizz control, or you'll scare the neighbors. It piled on, layer by layer, until I hid in the basement with Dad's old PC. Computers didn't care if you were husky or had a unibrow they ran, or they didn't. No one told a line of code to suck in its cheeks for the interface to look slimmer. By 11, I was teaching myself HTML from library books hauled from Philly Mall. Building simple pages about snow forts and cheer routines ironic. Right. It was my first escape, the screen glowing warmer than any holiday light, but those early years shaped everything, turning their words into armor I didn't know I was forging. The basement became my lab, where stupid ideas turned into something real, something they couldn't touch. Those basement coding sessions turned into a full survival strategy by middle school. I had it down to a science wake-up before dawn to dodge the morning roast sessions, scarf down breakfast alone in the dark, then bolt to school. Breakfast was prime time for Mom's helpful scans. Your hair's a frozen mess again, fix that before the bus. Dad would chime in with a yawn. Linebacker ready for the field. It was their daily opener, setting the tone for the day. I'd slip out, backpack heavy with notebooks, aiming to blend into the windy hallways. Lunch was my first line of defense. Cafeteria drama. No thanks. I'd claim extra credit projects to the teachers, holing up in the computer lab instead. The hum of fans and click of keys drowned out the world. I'd tweak CSS for mock websites, pretending it was homework while the popular crowd traded gossip and hostess cakes. No one bothered you in there if you looked busy enough. Dinner was non-negotiable, but I'd count the minutes in my room after, door locked, screen glowing until lights out. That routine kept me sane, a shield against the constant undercurrent of comparison. Madison wasn't always the villain in it. She'd burst into my room now and then, cheer pom-poms in hand, begging for math help or a quick run-through of her routine. Come on, you're good at this stuff, she'd say, flopping on my bed like we were normal sisters. Those moments were rare, only when Mom and Dad were out running errands or at Philly Mall sales. She'd laugh at my lame jokes, even share a candy bar, almost like she saw me as more than the shadow. But the second parents walked in, the mask snapped back. Thanks, but don't tell anyone I needed help from the basement dweller. It was a glimpse of what could have been, making the rest hurt more. Looking back at old photos, the few where I'm not cropped out, I wasn't some monster, just average. A bit rounder, with hair that fought every brush. But when you're told daily you're the flaw in the family portrait, it warps you. The real gut punch came in 8th grade, one of those makeover parties that were all the rage in the early 2000s. Mom was thrilled, like it was her chance to fix me for good. She even sprung for new clothes from the mall, whispering, "This'll help with the holiday cards next year." I showed up nervous, surrounded by girls giggling over lip gloss and straighteners. The host mom, a bubbly type with a salon smile, took one look and said, "Oh, honey, you have such pretty eyes. Why do you always hide behind those bangs and that scarf?" I froze. Then the dam broke. I sobbed right there, mascara running like a bad experiment. 13 years, and no one in my family had ever spotted anything worth praising. Not the eyes, not the smarts, nothing. They saw only the husky frame or the stupid hobbies. Mom patted my back on the way home, but it was empty. It's okay, we'll try harder next time. Try harder to hide me, she meant. Riley amped it up around then, hitting that age where he aped everything to fit in. Hallway taunts became his specialty. "Stupid nerd sis ruining the snowman photos," he'd yell, bumping my shoulder as kids snickered. It wasn't just words. He'd accidentally knock my books into slush puddles, grinning like dad after a bad joke. Family loyalty. I guess pick the winning side, and the underdog gets the boot. Middle school hallways felt like minefields. Every glance a reminder I was the punchline. The computer lab saved me, and Ms. Sierra, the tech teacher, spotted it first. She was this no-nonsense woman with a knack for seeing potential under the awkward. One lunch. She caught me debugging a simple script and slid over. "That's solid logic better than half my seniors. Want to learn JavaScript after school?" It was the first time someone valued my brain over my bangs. We met Tuesdays and Thursdays. The classroom empty except for us and the glow of monitors. She'd challenge me with real problems. "Make this button respond to clicks without lagging." I'd code until my fingers cramped, her nods fueling me more than any family pat on the back. "You've got a gift for this. Kid, don't let anyone dim it." Of course. They tried to snuff it out. Parent-teacher night rolled around, holiday-themed with twinkly lights strung up like a bad omen. Ms. Sierra pulled Mom and Dad aside, beaming, "Your daughter's a natural. She's leading after-school Java sessions, soon could have a real future in tech." Dad chuckled. "That's cute, but she's better off focusing on something practical, like sales, techs for boys with better hair." Mom nodded. All smiles for the crowd. "Oh, that's sweet. But she needs to prioritize subjects that lead to a husband. Chasing basement hobbies is just a distraction." They walked away arm in arm, leaving Ms. Sierra fuming quietly. I overheard from the hall, heart sinking like fresh snow. Even my one win got twisted into another failure. Those sessions with Ms. Sierra kept the flame alive. Though, turning stupid into a spark, they couldn't blow out. Middle school ended, but the routine stuck, evolving into something sharper. High school took that routine and twisted it into a nightmare, especially with Mom pulling double duty as the school counselor. Her office was a trap I couldn't avoid mandatory check-ins every quarter, disguised as support. She'd perch on her desk, flipping through my file like it was a bad novel. "If you structured your essays like this, you'd never get into a decent college," she'd say, tapping my latest paper. It wasn't just feedback, it was a public shaming, her voice carrying to the waiting room. Classmates would smirk when I left, whispering, "Counselor's kid must be a mess." Ever been counseled by your mom into a negative example? It's like getting therapy from the source of your trauma. She layered it with the usual digs, blending school critiques with home hits. Less hunching in the back row to hide, more speaking up or no one like Dylan's friends will notice you. Dylan was my sister's boyfriend, the star quarterback with the easy smile and Letterman jacket that made girls swoon. Mom was convinced he was my only shot at normal, pushing me to fix up for group hangs. Spoiler. He stuck with Madison, leaving me to fade into the bleachers. Madison owned high school like it was scripted for her. Senior year, she was homecoming queen, gliding down the field in her crown, while I manned the coat check in the gym's chill. Dating Dylan sealed it. He'd sling an arm around her at pep rallies, the crowd cheering like she was royalty, every dance. She'd get crowned again. sequins sparkling under the lights, while I lingered by the punch bowl, invisible. Classmates loved the contrast, pulling me aside with feigned sympathy. "You're Madison's sister, she's so vibrant. How do you deal?" The unspoken end hung there, making me smaller each time. Survival meant upgrades to my arsenal. I'd arrive 20 minutes early for classes, snagging the back corner seat where spotlights missed. Lunch, I'd flash a forged note for library time. Burying myself in stacks near the computers, headphones became my armor big. Noise-canceling ones that screamed, "Approach at your own risk." I'd crank playlists of indie tracks, the bass thumping out the whispers. Free periods went to the library's quiet wing, where I'd sketch wireframes for websites. Far from the cafeteria cliques trading yearbook predictions, Ms. Sierra ramped up her role, turning after school into a lifeline. We'd dive deeper, her assigning portfolio pieces, wire a full site with user login, make it seamless. She'd review over coffee from the vending machine, marking up printouts with red pen. This authentication loop is tight. Polish the UI for accessibility. It was the first place my work got critiqued for strength, not flaws. When college apps loomed junior year, she cornered me after a session. "State Uni has a killer CS program full ride potential if we nail the essays." She handled the forms behind the scenes, knowing Mom and Dad would veto anything not on Madison's list. "Your logic shines. Don't let them clip your wings," she'd mutter, sealing the envelope. It was rebellion in paperwork, a secret ticket out. Madison's glow-up amplified the shade, as valedictorian. Her speech at graduation was a masterclass in irony. Standing tall on stage, gown flowing, she preached, "Embrace your unique spark, love yourself fiercely, no matter the storm." The audience ate it up, applauding as if she'd invented self-love. The girl who'd suggested I wrap a scarf over my face for her Sweet 16 photos to save the aesthetic now preaching authenticity, I clapped from the bleachers, bitter taste in my mouth. The ceremony photos sealed the farce, family shots lined up, and there I was, shuffled to the rear behind the Christmas tree prop standard protocol. Mom posed with Madison front and center, Dad beaming like a proud sponsor. I caught snippets of Mom's chat with other parents. At least one came out polished. "We're still working on the other to grow into her looks, smart's nice. But grow into my features at 18 with Mom's round face and Dad's brows locked in. That ship had sailed. It was the final twist of the knife, their pride a mirror reflecting my erasure. High school wrapped with that bitter bow, the hypocrisy lingering like frost on the windows. But Ms. Sierra's envelope burned in my bag. A promise of thaw. That envelope from Ms. Sierra carried me out of high school and into a new world. The summer after graduation, I poured every waking hour into a job at Circuit City near the Philly Mall, fixing laptops and stacking cash in a secret account. Pro tip: never let toxic parents near your bank card. Every shift was a grind, customers whining about slow PCs, managers barking about quotas, but it was my ticket out. I'd sneak glances at coding tutorials between repairs, dreaming of a life beyond their jabs. By August, I'd saved enough for a deposit on a studio apartment near the State Uni in New Jersey. The day after graduation, while Mom and Dad were off at a brunch sipping mimosas, I loaded my Honda Civic with everything that mattered. If you've spent 18 years being told not to take up space, your life fits in a trunk. Aunt Fiona, Mom's sister who always saw through the family's charade, gave me the heads up they'd be out. I posted one cryptic line on Facebook, escaped the cold for good. Mom called within hours, not out of worry but pure panic. What will people think when they see this? Not "Are you okay?" Just her image. Always the star of the show. College hit like a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I wasn't Madison's shadow or the fix-it project. No one in the dorms cared about my frizzy hair or unibrow they saw me. Not the family's reject. I leaned into jeans and hoodies. No pretense. Just me. Classes were a grind. But computer science felt like home logic over judgment. I'd code late in the library, building apps for fun. Not to prove anything. It was freedom. Raw and unfiltered. Like shedding a skin I'd been forced to wear. But holidays brought the old script back. I'd drag myself home for Thanksgiving, bracing for the onslaught. Mom would scan me at the door. Those late nights coding or wrecking your face eat a salad. Not just ramen. Dad's go-to was met any business majors yet. Tech's cute, but you need a real man to settle with. Madison, now strutting as a junior in her fancy private college, tossed out backhanded gems. It's bold, wearing whatever without caring how it looks. Riley, barely a freshman, would side-eye me across the table, muttering, "Still playing with computers? Get a real job already." His smirk mirrored Dad's, a new recruit to the family playbook. Each jab landed lighter, though their words were losing grip, like ice melting underfoot. Ever had family try to drag you back into their mold? How'd you shake it off? Junior year, I locked in a 4.0 GPA, juggling 3 coding projects for my department. A paid internship at a local tech firm came next. Not some glossy startup, but a solid outfit building back-end systems. I was damn good. My advisor started whispering about grad school tracks, but I was already hustling on the side. I'd built custom AI tutor apps for students, little tools to optimize study paths, like flashcards that learned your weak spots. Word spread through campus group chats, then beyond. A Twitch streamer, some guy with a following for late-night study sessions, used one of my apps on stream. "This thing's a game changer," he raved, flashing my GitHub link to thousands. My inbox exploded, orders piled up faster than I could code, a backlog stretching weeks. I quit Circuit City, no longer needing the retail grind. The family caught wind through a cousin's post. Some kid who saw the stream clip on Twitter. Their reaction classic. Dad texted, "Guess if you can't be a looker. You can fix nerd toys for cash," Mom called. Voice syrupy. "It's nice you're useful, honey, but don't let it distract from finding someone." Madison DM'd a laughing emoji, "You're selling study apps. Brave for not aiming higher." Riley just sent a shrug. "Whatever. Keep at it." I guess. They thought it was a cute side gig, not the spark of something massive. Their dismissal fueled me, turning every late-night debug into a middle finger to their doubts. That hustle wasn't just about cash, it was about proving my brain could outshine their labels. The orders kept coming, and I was already dreaming bigger, sketching ideas that would flip the script entirely. Those sketches from college nights evolved into an obsession post-grad. But first came the entry-level grind. I landed a junior developer gig at a mid-size software shop in Jersey, crunching back-end code for inventory systems. To my parents, it was that little hobby phase, a polite way to say temporary distraction until you find a husband. Madison was living her best life in a McMansion with Dylan, posting filtered selfies from their empire, her word for his latest scheme. I kept my head down, logging 40-hour weeks. But off hours were mine. 2 years in, I'd stacked enough experience to spot gaps in education tech, and that's when the real work started. The project was born from frustration with clunky study apps that drained batteries like bad habits. I wanted something smarter AI that predicted learning paths, optimizing for efficiency without the bloat, living on ramen and vending machine coffee in my cramped apartment. I coded through the wee hours, whiteboards plastered with algorithms. It was brutal 6 months of dead ends, debugging until my eyes burned. But the breakthrough hit one frozen night away to prune unlikely outcomes, slashing processing by 60%. Apps could deliver personalized tutoring without frying your phone, like having a private coach in your pocket. I tossed a demo video on Twitter on a whim, a 30-second clip of the app adapting to a mock quiz, paths branching like a choose-your-own adventure. Slept through a blizzard, woke to chaos, 100K views overnight. Retweets from a celeb dev influencer calling it the future of edtech. DMs flooded with beta testers, coders geeking out over the math. Emails pinged from studios I thought were spam, turns out. EduTech Corp was legit. Scouting for acquisitions. My phone melted from notifications. The first time stupid hobby felt like a superpower. The Zoom call with their execs was surreal. My face framed in a hoodie from a campus sale, cat batting at chords in the background. This predictive pruning revolutionary, the lead dev said, scribbling notes. Paradigm shift for mobile learning. They flew me to their Philly headquarters. My first business class ride, a blur of free snacks and imposter syndrome. In the conference room, glass walls overlooking the city, I walked them through the engine, heart hammering. Veterans with decades in the game leaned in, firing questions I somehow nailed. Scale it for 10K users, how's the latency? My mind screamed fraud, but they didn't blink. Numbers flew, royalties, equity, when they landed on 600,000 after taxes. I nearly choked. Repeat that, I croaked. And they did. Kendra Lee, my lawyer I found through a uni alum network, handled the 3-month dance. Contracts are mazes, she said over coffee, breaking down clauses like Ms. Sierra with code. Sign nothing without me. She saved my skin on the non-compete, ensuring I kept rights to spin-offs. Signing happened on a drizzly Tuesday in her office, the pen heavy. Checking the bank app later, all those zeros hit like a glitch in the matrix. I sank to the floor. Cat tilting its head as I laughed through tears. First move loans gone with one click. That weight lifted cleaner than any diet mom ever pushed. Next, a 3-bedroom in Cherry Hill. Nothing flashy, but with a dedicated office and standing desk that said, I made it. I kept it under wraps at first, savoring the win without their spin. But suburbs gossip like wildfire. A cousin spotted the acquisition article on a gaming forum and blasted it on Facebook. Hayes girl sells AI thing big bucks. The floodgates opened. Mom's weekly guilt calls morphed to daily gushes. I always knew you had it in you, buried under all that focus. Dad's texts pinged, proud. Kid maybe buy dad a new ride. DMs from distant relatives piled up, probing for loans or investments. It was Olympic-level flip-flopping, their tone shifting faster than Jersey weather. The dinner invite came wrapped in family bonding. Cheesecake factory near the mall. Mom's idea of upscale. I agreed. Dr. Tessa's voice in my head. Test the boundaries, see what sticks. They were overdressed, Mom in her church blazer. Dad in a tie, last seen at Madison's engagement party. Madison channeling desperate housewife chic. Aggressively nice, Mom cooed over my hair. Less frizzy these days. Dad grilled about the computer gig like he'd invented it. Madison stroked my arm. Sis, you're killing it. Sis hadn't heard that since we shared crayons. The mask cracked when I mentioned the app. It's helping thousands learn smarter. Efficient paths without waste. Madison's smile froze, eyes narrowing. Your stupid app paying bills while my life's freezing in this mortgage hell. Dylan's crypto tanked, everything savings gone. Kids facing public school chaos. Jealousy boiled over. She sneered. Did Mom and Dad pick you up from the trash to rub it in? Laughter erupted, Dad chuckling. Old times. Mom forcing a giggle. Riley smirking from his phone. The begs tumbled out. Family helps family chip in for the house. Madison teared up. Think of the kids, sis. I locked eyes with Mom. I thought you were treating, since family takes care of family. Silence dropped like a hard drive crash. I slid cash for my half exact. App calculated and stood. What would have meant the world not being called ugly and stupid every day for 18 years? Not having my sister pretend she didn't know me at school dances. Their faces twisted shock. Then fury. Madison whispered to Mom. Should have softened her up first. I walked out into the drizzle, posting a raw boundaries letter on FB 27 years of shadows end today no more. It racked 50 likes from old friends. The first ripple of my unfiltered truth. The calls exploded that night, but the line was drawn my empire rising. Their regrets just beginning. Texts started pouring in before I even reached the parking lot. A barrage of digital daggers. Mom led with, "How dare you humiliate us after all we've sacrificed those school supplies weren't free." Dad followed, "Your mother's in tears. Hope you're proud." Madison's was a novel selfish much. The kids are suffering because of your attitude. Think of their future. Riley chimed in, "Owe us big time. Remember the mittens I shared in 3rd grade? Flying monkeys mobilized cousins and aunts I hadn't heard from since middle school. All reminding me of family duty. It was a predictable playlist. Week 1 outrage. Week 2 guilt about the nieces. Week 3 forgive and pay up. Week 4 we bought your winter coat once. The final straw landed 2 weeks later, unannounced. Mom and Madison showed up on my porch, snow dusting their coats, bawling like an audition for a bad soap. "We always loved you," Mom wailed. "Just wanted to guide your money wisely. It's family." Madison clutched a tissue. "Don't let pride destroy us all." Security camera caught every frame, their faces twisted in performative grief. I didn't open the door. Instead, I texted Kendra, "Time for the cease letter." She drafted it that night, formal, airtight, barring contact except emergencies, delivered certified. "Consider this your firewall," she said when I signed. I blocked them across the board phones, emails, socials, even LinkedIn where Dad tried networking. Riley got the boot too, no exceptions. His side eye earning him the same silence. Kendra's letter hit like a shutdown command, and the fallout unfolded in real time. Madison and Dylan's McMansion went under CH7 bankruptcy, sealed it. Foreclosure complete after 6 months under New Jersey law. The house auctioned off in a packed courtroom. Madison dove into MLM essential oils on Facebook, hawking diffusers for stress relief she clearly needed. Scraping $20,000 a year amid returns and complaints. The divorce papers filed 3 months post-dinner. Dylan bolting for a Web3 baby food venture that fizzled faster than his crypto dream. Their kids switched to public school. The gasp-worthy fall from grace Madison once dreaded. Brandon and Carla's retirement evaporated. Dad slugged through overtime at the dealership. Commissions drying up in the Northeast slump. Social Security too distant to touch. Carla burned out counseling. Her examples of bad structure now backfiring on her whispers from colleagues about that Hayes drama cost her a part-time gig. No more parent-teacher nights for her, just endless nights grading papers alone. Riley spiraled too. His college scholarship yanked after family stress tanked his GPA, too many missed classes. Too much helping at home. He ghosted everyone, crashing on friends' couches, a distant echo of the taunter he'd become. No calls from him begging, just radio silence. The family chain broken for good. Me thriving looked like shedding the weight I'd carried. Stress eating stopped, pounds melted. Skin cleared no more, tired complexion lectures. The mirror showed someone new, someone who'd outgrown their labels. I launched a tech consulting firm for indie education devs. Funneling royalties from the app into separate accounts, Kendra locked down tight. Clients trickled in, then flooded studios needing my optimization tricks. Word spreading through conferences. It wasn't just money. It was purpose. Helping creators build without the burnout. Logan Reed entered the picture at a Philly Dev conference, his booth next to mine showcasing game mechanics. "This path predictor brilliant," he said, eyes lighting up. "You're lovely, inside out." No qualifiers, no pity, just real. We bonded over bad coffee, swapping stories of imposter hits. He's the one who suggested the recordings folder, a cloud vault of their greatest hits, Dad's jokes, Mom's advice, Madison's backhands, not for revenge, but reminders. When doubt creeps in, I hit play. Look what you built despite this noise. Aunt Fiona's my anchor now, dropping by for wine and trashy rom-coms, the only family tie I kept. "Blood's optional," she says, clinking glasses. "Cares what counts." Proof that not all branches rot. Sisters out there juggling scars from girlhood shaming and sibling wars. Boundaries aren't walls. They're the heel you deserve. They mend the body blows, letting you rise without apology. Build your empire on your worth, not their echoes. You've earned the light. Claim it unapologetically. Comment if you've cut ties. What's your empowerment tale? Let's lift each other up. Update Logan's in on the saga. Cracking dad jokes about coding our way to bliss. No more startup pitches. Madison, your MLM's not my vibe. And yeah, that engine powers half the top study apps this year legally. That's all I can spill.
"You don't belong in this family." Margaret's voice was ice cold, her words slicing through the tense silence in the living room. I stared at her, frozen. My suitcase sat by the door, packed with what little I could take with me. My dad hovered nearby, silent as always, his eyes fixed on the floor. He wouldn't look at me. Margaret, on the other hand, met my gaze with that same steely indifference she'd always worn around me. "I don't understand," I managed, my voice trembling. "Why are you sending me away?" "It's for the best," she said, her tone clipped. "You'll be happier with your relatives. This arrangement hasn't worked for any of us." She said it so casually, as if uprooting my life was just another item on her to-do list. My name is Louise, and I was 15 when my stepmother decided I didn't belong in her version of a family. My mom had passed away when I was 9, and for a while it was just me and my dad. I missed her terribly, but at least we were close. Then Margaret entered the picture. She wasn't cruel, not outright, but she didn't try to hide her disinterest in me either. She married my dad, brought her daughter Charlotte into the house, and acted as if they were the only ones who mattered. Over time, it became clear that I wasn't part of her plans. She ignored me at family dinners, dismissed my achievements, and constantly found subtle ways to push me aside. My dad never stood up for me. He'd just mumble something about keeping the peace and ask me to try harder to get along. When Margaret finally sent me to live with distant relatives, I stopped expecting him to protect me. Life with my relatives was far from perfect. They weren't unkind, but they weren't particularly warm either. I spent most of my teenage years feeling like a guest in their home, working after school to save for college and relying on books to escape the loneliness. It was through volunteering that I found a sense of purpose. Helping others reminded me that I wasn't powerless. It gave me a direction, a reason to push forward. By the time I turned 25, I'd built something of my own, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering people who had been overlooked or cast aside. The work filled me with pride, and for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. I hadn't thought about Margaret in years, but life has a way of bringing the past back when you least expect it. Years passed, and the bitterness I felt toward Margaret began to fade, not because I forgave her, but because I had no room in my life for her anymore. I'd built something for myself, something bigger than her dismissal. My nonprofit, Community Horizons, started small, working with underfunded schools and shelters to provide grants and resources. At first, it was just me and a small team of volunteers, scraping together donations and making things happen on sheer willpower. Over time, though, the organization grew. With each successful project, our reputation spread, and so did the support. By the time I was 32, Community Horizons had become one of the most respected nonprofits in the region. We managed scholarships, funded local businesses, and even helped struggling families rebuild their lives. One afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing grant applications. It was my favorite part of the job, reading stories of perseverance and deciding how best to help people who are working hard to improve their lives. My assistant Evelyn walked in with a fresh stack of applications. "Got another batch for you," she said, setting the pile on my desk. "Thanks," I said, grabbing the first folder from the top. The name on the application stopped me cold. Margaret Bennett. For a moment, I just stared at the page. Her name jumped out at me like a bad dream resurfacing after years of dormancy. Slowly, I flipped through the application. She was requesting funding to save a small cafe she'd opened after retiring from her corporate job. I let out a shaky laugh, the absurdity of the situation washing over me. Margaret Bennett, my stepmother, the woman who had cast me aside without a second thought, was asking for help from me. Evelyn noticed my expression. "Everything okay?" she asked. I cleared my throat, slipping the folder back onto the pile. "Yeah, just a familiar name, that's all." "Good familiar or bad familiar?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Let's just say it's complicated," I replied. Later that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The irony was almost poetic. The woman who had once told me I didn't belong in her family was now turning to my organization for help. Part of me wanted to laugh, but another part of me felt something else. Anger, maybe, or sadness. After all these years, Margaret's actions still lingered in the corners of my mind, reminding me of the rejection I'd worked so hard to overcome. But this wasn't just about the past. Now, I had the power to decide how this story would end. The next morning, I sat at my desk with Margaret's application spread out in front of me. My coffee had gone cold, but I barely noticed. The details of her request painted a picture of desperation. Her cafe was struggling due to rising costs and declining foot traffic. She needed funding to keep the doors open, to pay her employees, and to stay afloat. I could almost hear her voice in my head, justifying the situation. "It's for the greater good," she would have said, as if her struggle erased all the damage she'd done to me. Evelyn knocked on the door and poked her head in. "Hey, we've got that board meeting in 20 minutes. You ready?" I nodded, closing the folder. "Yeah, I'll be there." She hesitated. "You sure you're okay? You've been quiet today." I forced a small smile. "I'm fine, just a lot on my mind." As she left, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. What was I supposed to do? Reject her application out of spite? Approve it and pretend the past didn't matter? Both options felt wrong. Later that day, I called my mentor, Claire. She'd been there for me since the early days of Community Horizons, guiding me through tough decisions and offering wisdom when I needed it most. "What's on your mind?" she asked as soon as she answered. I explained the situation, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Part of me wants to throw the application in the trash," I admitted. "But another part of me feels like, I don't know, like this is some kind of test." Claire was quiet for a moment. "Do you think she knows it's your organization?" "No," I said firmly. "She wouldn't have applied if she did." "Then the question isn't about her," Claire said. "It's about you. What kind of person do you want to be in this moment?" Her words hit me hard. "I want to do what's right," I said, though my voice wavered. "Then take your time," she replied. "You don't have to decide today." That evening, I opened Margaret's file again, this time with a calmer mind. Her cafe might not have been my concern, but her employees were. They didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of her poor management. I realized I wasn't just deciding Margaret's fate. I was deciding what kind of leader I wanted to be. As I closed the file, I made a promise to myself. Whatever I chose, it would be a decision I could live with. The next morning, I began researching Margaret's situation in greater detail. I wanted to understand exactly what I was dealing with before making any decisions. Using the public records of her business, I pieced together a clearer picture of the cafe's struggles. It wasn't hard to see where things had gone wrong. She'd overextended herself, taking out loans to expand without properly budgeting for rising costs. Her menu was outdated, her marketing non-existent, and customer reviews painted a picture of inconsistent service. I sighed, closing my laptop. It was classic Margaret, proud, impulsive, and too stubborn to ask for help until it was almost too late. Later that afternoon, Evelyn caught me staring at the application again. "You know," she said, pulling up a chair, "if this is weighing on you so much, maybe you need to look at it differently." I raised an eyebrow. "How do you mean?" "Well," she began, leaning forward, "why not separate the personal from the professional? Forget who she is for a moment. If this was just another application, what would you do?" Her words gave me pause. It was a good question, and one I didn't have an easy answer for. "I'd probably approve partial funding," I admitted after a moment. "The cafe has potential if it's managed properly, but knowing who she is changes everything." Evelyn nodded. "Of course it does. But you're not just deciding her fate. You're setting an example. For yourself, for this organization, and for everyone who's ever looked up to you." Her words echoed what Claire had said the day before. It wasn't just about Margaret. It was about me, about the principles I'd built my life and career on. That evening, I sat down with the application one last time. I wasn't ready to decide, but I felt closer to understanding what needed to be done. I started drafting a proposal, not for full funding, but for a conditional grant. If Margaret wanted the money, she'd have to meet certain requirements: updated marketing plans, operational improvements, and mandatory workshops for her and her staff. It wasn't just about giving her money, it was about giving her a chance to prove she could change. By the time I finished, the knot in my stomach had loosened. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was one I could live with. The next step would be the hardest: delivering my decision to Margaret herself. The day came for me to finalize my decision. As I sat in my office reviewing the proposal I'd drafted, my emotions were a tangled mess of anger, pity, and a quiet determination to stay true to my values. Evelyn knocked softly on the door and stepped in. "You've been staring at that file for hours," she said, sitting across from me. "Are you ready?" "I think so," I replied, "but the hard part's still ahead." She tilted her head. "You're going to tell her in person, aren't you?" I nodded. "It's the only way. She deserves to hear it directly from me." Evelyn hesitated, then placed a hand on my desk. "You don't owe her this, you know. After everything she did to you, no one would blame you for sending an email and washing your hands of it." "I know," I said softly, "but this isn't about her. It's about me." 2 days later, I stood in the lobby of Margaret's cafe. It was a modest space with scuffed floors and a menu board that hadn't been updated in years. The hum of conversation filled the room, but there was a heaviness in the air, a quiet acknowledgement that this place was struggling to stay afloat. Margaret appeared from the back, her eyes widening when she saw me. "Louise," she said, her voice tinged with both surprise and unease. "Hi, Margaret," I said evenly. She wiped her hands on her apron, glancing around the room as if searching for an escape route. What are you doing here?" I held up the folder containing her application. "We need to talk." Her face paled as realization dawned. "You're the one reviewing my grant?" "I am," I confirmed, my tone calm but firm. "Let's find somewhere private to talk." We sat down in a small, cramped office at the back of the cafe. Margaret's hands fidgeted in her lap as I opened the folder. "I've reviewed your application," I began, keeping my tone professional. "And I have some thoughts." Her eyes darted to mine. "I didn't know," she started, but I raised a hand to stop her. "This isn't about what you knew or didn't know," I said. "It's about the state of your business and whether or not I believe this grant can make a difference." She swallowed hard, nodding silently. I laid out my conditions: partial funding contingent on her participation in workshops, implementing a marketing plan, and providing regular updates on her progress. "If you agree to these terms, we'll approve the grant," I concluded. Margaret's lips trembled as she nodded again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." Her gratitude sounded genuine, but I couldn't shake the feeling of lingering tension between us. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a much-needed reckoning. The silence in the office hung heavy after I laid out the terms of the grant. Margaret sat across from me, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. For someone who had always exuded confidence, seeing her like this felt almost surreal. "I appreciate this," she said finally, her voice uneven. I know I don't deserve it." Her words caught me off guard. Margaret wasn't someone who admitted fault easily, and hearing her say it now stirred something in me. Anger, pity, and a faint flicker of something I couldn't yet name. "This isn't about what you deserve," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "It's about the people who depend on you. Your employees, your customers. They deserve a chance." She nodded, her eyes dropping to her hands. "I didn't know it was you," she said softly. "If I had, I wouldn't have applied." "That's exactly why you need to hear this," I said, leaning forward. "You cast me aside, Margaret. You made me feel like I didn't matter, like I wasn't part of the family. And now you're sitting here asking for help. Do you see the irony in that?" She flinched, her shoulders sinking. "I was wrong," she murmured, barely audible. I wanted to feel vindicated, to bask in the satisfaction of hearing those words. But instead I felt an ache in my chest, a reminder of the years I'd spent carrying the weight of her rejection. "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop myself. Margaret looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't know," she admitted. "When your mother died, I thought I could handle it. But I wasn't ready for you. I was scared, and I took the easy way out." Her voice cracked, and she looked away. "It doesn't excuse what I did. I know that. I don't know how to make it right." For a moment, I just stared at her, my emotions a swirling mix of anger, sorrow, and something resembling closure. Margaret wasn't the invincible figure I'd built up in my mind. She was flawed, broken, and human. "You can start," I said finally, "by taking responsibility for your actions. Not just with me, but with everyone you've let down." She nodded slowly, her expression somber. "I'll do better," she whispered. I didn't know if I believed her, but in that moment, it didn't matter. This wasn't about her redemption. It was about me finding the strength to move forward. As I stood to leave, she reached out hesitantly. "Thank you, Louise. For everything." I paused, meeting her gaze. "Don't thank me, Margaret. Thank the people who gave you this chance." And with that, I walked out of the cafe, feeling lighter than I had in years. Walking out of that cafe, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I'd stood up to Margaret, laid bare the pain she'd caused, and taken the first steps toward letting go of the resentment I'd carried for years. But as much as I wanted to believe this was the end of it, I knew better. Confrontations like that rarely tied everything up in a neat little bow. Back at my office, I dove into the work of approving the grant. The funding wasn't just for Margaret. It was for her employees, her customers, and the community her cafe served. Evelyn and I worked late into the night, finalizing the paperwork and setting the terms that Margaret had reluctantly agreed to. Do you think she'll follow through? Evelyn asked as we reviewed the final documents. She'll have to, I replied. If she doesn't, the funding gets pulled. This isn't a handout, it's a lifeline, and it comes with strings attached. Evelyn nodded, but her brow furrowed. And what about you? Do you feel okay about all this? I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long breath. I think so. It's complicated, but at the end of the day, this is bigger than her or me. I have to believe that doing the right thing will pay off in the long run. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Margaret started attending the mandatory workshops we'd arranged, though she remained reserved and distant during most of them. I could tell she was uncomfortable, out of her element, but she showed up and did the work. Richard, one of the trainers we'd hired for the workshops, gave me regular updates. She's making progress, he said during one of our check-ins. Slowly, but it's there. She's starting to listen at least. That's something, I replied, though I couldn't help but wonder if it would last. One afternoon, I received an email from Margaret. It was short, almost awkward, but it caught me off guard. Louise, I wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm trying. I hope one day I can prove that to you. I stared at the screen, rereading the words until they blurred. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd ever expected from her. Progress, Evelyn said when I showed her the email. Maybe, I replied, though I wasn't ready to call it that just yet. As the cafe began to stabilize, I saw the impact of the grant taking shape. Foot traffic increased, new marketing strategies brought in fresh customers, and the employees seemed more energized. Margaret was no longer the picture of pride and control that I'd grown up knowing. She was humbled, and though I didn't trust her entirely, I could see her trying. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel a small measure of hope. Maybe this wasn't just a second chance for her. It was one for me, too. The cafe's transformation was gradual, but undeniable. The new marketing strategies brought in a steady stream of customers, and the workshops had helped Margaret and her staff find their footing. The cafe began to hum with a quiet energy that I hadn't seen when I first stepped through its doors. Richard called me one afternoon with an update. Margaret's really taking to the workshops, he said. She's even started mentoring some of her younger staff. It's like she's finally realizing what it means to lead by example. Wow, I replied, surprised. That's unexpected. She still has her moments, he added with a chuckle. But don't we all? I laughed, but the truth was, I didn't know what to make of it. Margaret had spent so many years being dismissive and self-centered that it was hard to believe she was capable of real change. But I couldn't deny the progress she was making, both in the cafe and apparently in herself. A few weeks later, I decided to visit the cafe unannounced. The place was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Customers chatted at tables. Employees worked efficiently behind the counter, and the smell of freshly baked bread filled the air. Margaret was at the register, chatting warmly with a customer. It was a sight I never thought I'd see, her smile genuine, her posture relaxed. She noticed me standing near the door and waved me over. Louise, she said, her tone surprisingly warm. I wasn't expecting you. Thought I'd drop by and see how things were going, I replied, glancing around the bustling cafe. Looks like business is good. It is, she said, pride flickering in her eyes. Thanks to you. Her words caught me off guard. It's not just me, I said. You did the work. You earned this. Margaret hesitated, then nodded. Still, I wouldn't have gotten here without your help. We sat down at one of the tables, and for the first time our conversation felt almost normal. She talked about the challenges of running the cafe, the lessons she'd learned in the workshops, and her plans for the future. I didn't think I'd enjoy mentoring, she admitted, but it's been rewarding. The younger staff, they remind me of myself when I first started out. It feels good to help them find their way. Hearing her say that stirred something in me. Maybe people could change if given the chance. As I left the cafe that day, I felt lighter. Margaret's journey wasn't over, and neither was mine. But for the first time, it felt like we were moving in the right direction, separately, but with a newfound respect for each other's paths. Helping her wasn't about redemption or repairing the past. It was about staying true to myself and the values that had shaped me. And in doing so, I'd found a sense of peace I never thought possible. In the weeks following my visit to the cafe, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected turn of events. Margaret's progress was undeniable, and while I wasn't ready to rewrite our history, I couldn't ignore the changes I'd seen in her. One afternoon, I sat at my desk, reviewing a new batch of grant applications. It felt good to return to the work that had always grounded me, but Margaret's file lingered in the back of my mind like an unfinished chapter. Evelyn walked in with her usual pep, placing a cup of tea on my desk. "You've been quiet lately," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Still thinking about Margaret?" I nodded, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. It's strange. For so long, I told myself I didn't care about her or what she thought of me. But now, I don't know. Seeing her change, it's harder than I expected. "Harder how?" Evelyn asked, her tone curious. "Because it means I can't hold on to the anger anymore," I admitted. "She's not the same person who sent me away, and that scares me, in a way." Evelyn smiled gently. "Letting go of anger isn't weakness, Louise, it's strength. It means you're moving forward, even if she's still catching up." Her words resonated more than I expected. Maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe it was time to let go, not to forgive entirely, but to release the weight of the resentment I'd carried for so long. That evening, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I thought about everything that had led me here, the rejection, the struggle, the choices I'd made to build a life that felt meaningful. I didn't need Margaret's approval or validation. I'd proven to myself that I was capable, that I could thrive despite her doubts. But I also realized that holding on to the past would only hold me back. With a deep breath, I made a decision. I would continue supporting the cafe as long as Margaret kept up her efforts. Not for her, but for the people who relied on it, and for me, to honor the person I'd become. This wasn't about fixing the past. It was about moving forward, with or without her. A month later, I received an email update from Richard about Margaret's cafe. The subject line read, "Milestone reached." Curious, I opened it to find a detailed report on their recent successes. Sales had tripled since the implementation of new strategies. Employee retention had improved, and customer reviews were glowing. Attached to the email was a photo of Margaret standing behind the counter, smiling as she handed a customer a pastry. For the first time, she looked genuinely happy, not just proud or determined, but content. I stared at the image for a long time, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. This was what I'd hoped for when I approved the grant. Not just financial recovery, but personal growth. Margaret had found a way to adapt, to lead, to build something meaningful again. But most importantly, I realized I had found a way to let go. That evening, Evelyn and I went out for dinner to celebrate Community Horizons' recent achievements. Over a plate of steaming pasta, she leaned across the table and said, "So, what's next for you?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've built this incredible nonprofit. You've faced down the ghosts of your past, and you've come out stronger for it. What's the next big thing on your horizon?" I smiled, considering her question. "Honestly, I think I just want to keep doing what we're doing, helping people, making a difference. But maybe..." I trailed off, an idea forming in the back of my mind. "Maybe what?" she pressed, her eyes lighting up. "Maybe it's time to expand," I said slowly. "Not just grants, but mentorship programs, workshops for people like Margaret, business owners who need guidance and support to adapt." Evelyn grinned. Now that's the Louise I know, always thinking ahead. As I walked home that night, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. The work I'd done with Community Horizons had always been about more than just grants or numbers. It was about giving people a chance to grow, to change, to become better versions of themselves. Margaret's journey had shown me that growth was possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. And while I still didn't fully trust her, I could acknowledge her progress without carrying the weight of the past. I didn't need closure from her. I'd found it in myself. The next morning, I sent Richard a reply to his email. "Great work," I wrote. "Let's keep the momentum going." It wasn't flashy or dramatic, but it was enough. For the first time, I felt free. Free to move forward, to dream bigger, and to let the past be just that, the past.